Hey everybody, well, we have a few more people coming in, but it's great to see everybody on this slightly snowy night. Welcome. My name is Cynthia Cook, and I'm the president of the Clinton Historical Society. And you are all here, I hope, for the wonderful presentation on the Germond family murders, a forensic conclusion to a cold case that will be presented by our speaker, Dr. Vincent Cookingham. And I'm so glad he has come up here from Florida and is weathering our storm to be with us tonight.
Glad I moved.
Very, very shocking to me. But before we turn the program over to Dr. Cookingham, I have a few very important thank yous to make. First of all, to Carol Bancroft and to the Clinton Community Library, our partners in this event, but also the folks who handle all of the reservations and have done so many things, down to getting my little remarks printed tonight. So Carol has been wonderful, and we thank her for her help. We also are grateful to Carol Mackin of the Clinton Town Clerk for her help in sending people to the appropriate place to sign up and for keeping everybody informed. So that's great. I also want to thank Herb Sweet, who I thought was right here. Oh, there he is. He's in the back. Herb Sweet is one of our volunteers. His wife is on the board of the Clinton Historical Society, Barbara, and he's going to be videotaping this program and making it available to people on our YouTube channel. So spread the word if you know people who want to see it. It will be available on the Clinton Historical Society website pretty soon. And that leads me also to thank Craig Marshall, our Vice President, who has done innumerable services helping to get us set up for, well, let's see, he's going to take pictures, and I know he's been helping with the technology. So thanks, Craig and Craig.
He sold a few books.
I also owe a big thanks to Kathy McMahon. Kathy has done the fantastic publicity for this event, and she's just been all around a great person. Thank you, Kathy, for what you've done for this. And her husband, Frank, who was here this afternoon helping to set up chairs. Which reminds me, when the program is over, we're going to ask everybody to please put your chair away. There's a Zumba class tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. in this room. So it's we got to have it turned around for the next busy event here. I want to thank the program committee, Bob Schock, on our board, and his co-chair, my husband, Elliot Werner. And I really have to say that Elliot, who he's not a member of our board, but he's kind of an honorary member, has really knocked himself out.
He has, yes he has.
Innumerable things to get this program in order for tonight, so thank you to Elliot. And then at the end of the program, I'm happy to report, we will have refreshments. Some hot cider, some water, and we have a number of people who have baked, home-baked goods, and I want to thank them. Jane McAvoy, I'm not sure they're all here. There she is. Hi, Jane. Mary Jo Nickerson. No, she's not here. Okay. Lisa Novell. Maybe not here. Lori Brand. Lori, okay. Her husband Joe is here. Lori Brands, I know. Thank you, is here. Also, Kathy McMahon did baking, as well as some last-minute shopping when we discovered we had so many people that we needed some supplemental supplies. And then our hospitality chairwoman, Marcia.
Maybe you should do this act at Browns tomorrow. What do you think? Me and Warner.
Our restrooms right around the corner through this door, rather than going down some kind of treacherous stairs into the restrooms that are in the lower level. So I think that leads me to the happy event of being able to introduce our speaker, Dr. Vincent Cookingham. Dr. Cookingham has over 50 years of investigative and forensic science experience as a law enforcement officer, corporate executive, consultant, and university professor in forensic science. He has numerous peer-reviewed professional publications and books. Excuse me. He holds a PhD with a doctoral dissertation in the forensic applications in white-collar crime. In addition, he holds degrees of Master of Business Administration and a Master of Arts from the John Jay College of Criminal Justice. as well as a BS in forensic science. In addition, prior to retirement, he was granted 3 professional board certifications. He is widely known for forensic cold case investigations and commentary. He is a veteran of the U.S. Marine Corps, as well as a native New Yorker who has come up here to be with us from his home in Port St. Lucie, Florida. So please, welcome Dr. Cookingham.
I want to reiterate my thanks to all the people who mentioned, particularly my pen pal, Elliot. Where is he? Elliot, where are you? Elliot was right on top of this thing. He really answered my call for everything. I'm going to talk about a case that happened 92 years ago. My people settled in Stanfordville, New York, and Bangor in 200 years ago. Cookingham family. You'll notice there are roads throughout Dutchess County named for Cookingham. There's 2 people in this audience whose name is Cookingham that I've never met before in my life. Also, my family, they were born mostly in Bangor. My parents were married in the old church in Bangor, in Immaculate Conception Church. But what I want to tell you about is what I'm here to do. First of all, I got to tell you my good points. I'm not going to tell you the bad points. It'd take too long. So the good points, I want to do first. I'm not a lawyer. I deserve a medal for that. Everybody in North America, sooner or later, will be a lawyer. And when you're born, you will not be given a wrist thing. You'll be issued your own lawyer. Everybody has. I have 4 of them at times. Okay. The second thing, I'm not a politician. I have nothing to do with politics, directly or indirectly. I'm not a historian, and Cynthia can tell you that. I'm not a newspaper or media person. I'm board certified, formally board certified, I'm retired, forensic scientist for the American Academy of Forensic Chemistry and Forensic Criminology. Okay? I had quite a few professional opportunities to do things, but I was here on business in Poughkeepsie about 10 years ago, 10 years ago, and I met a sheriff at the pistol range there, of all places. When I told him what my name was, he said, "Oh, your name is all over the place here. The sheriff in 1933 was named Cookingham." Now, I'm not particularly proud of his performance in 1933, which we'll get to in a minute. But I said, yeah, right. He says, "Do you know anything about that murder? I saw your article one time. Oh, you're having training. You do cold cases." I said, "Yeah. We got a cold case that's 85 years old in Stanfordville." "Oh, yeah?" Then he hit me with the case, and I just remembered as a little kid on the Salt Point Turnpike and on 82, which they call the county road when I was a little kid. And I said, "Okay, let me take a look." He says, "We got all kinds of pictures." So I went up to the sheriff's office and looked at the 22 pictures they had, and I looked and I looked. Okay, let me take copies of this with me. I'll take them with me. I'll study it. And then I went on to Google, and I got every article I could find on the Germond murders. There was no short of witnesses, no short of private detectives, no short of theories, no short of anything. So I need to find out what went on here. So nobody wanted to tell me anything. Very few people cooperated with me. But I found a great person who was interested in history. And his name was Brad Kendall. He was the county clerk. Brad and I became friends. Well, he introduced me to different people, and we finally made petitions that I could look at all the evidence. Was there any left? And he told me he was holding 3 big booklets of the Q&As from the autopsy, from the inquest minutes. I said, "Oh, that'll be helpful." So the court said, "No, you can't do it." So what I did was, I couldn't afford any more money spent on this thing. So I found the hardest thing a human being can find. It's even harder than finding a lost ring in the ocean. I tried to find a lawyer that would work for nothing. It wasn't in the cards. But I found a former judge that Brad introduced me to named Rosenblatt. Very nice man. He was interested in history. So we made friends. We all had lunch, myself and the district attorney, Grady, Brad, and the judge. And McCabe and Cap represented me before the court. Well, we sued, made all the things why this guy should be granted. He's a historian. He's no media guy. He's nothing. Judge Aker gave me a court order signed that I could get all the evidence in the medical examiner's office, all the evidence at the DA's office, every bit of evidence that survived. And I got it. I got it all. It took me 2 years to investigate it, to do texts and tests and everything else like that. And I finally got everything. And then I started to write and put pieces together. Then I had to contact old friends of mine, old colleagues, needed some forensic equipment, like interrupted lasers. We needed depixelization software and quite a few things I needed to do. We needed to do measurements. We needed to do line of sight. We had to do lumens for bus headlights. We did a lot of things. I mean, all scientific things. So let me tell you, basically, forensics, what we deal with. We deal with typologies. Typologies meaning historical evidence we found occur in certain kinds of crimes. We're able to make judgments based upon the history, the typologies of things. And we deal with the forensic sciences, with the physical sciences. Chemistry all the time. Biology, anthropology, absolutely. Pharmacology, serology, all those things are part of what we do. Now, every one of us are not experts in all of those things. My field of expertise was forensic serology and wounds ballistics in forensic anatomy. So I'll give you an idea where my head was at one time. So anyway, we take opinions from those things and the physical sciences and the typologies, and we render an opinion. We only can render 3 opinions that we're asked. What is your opinion on this? There's only 3 things we can say. Yes, no, or inconclusive. No other opinions can be professionally offered in court on any kind of things we do, because we deal just the facts, okay? Now, let me tell you what we don't deal with. Rumors, no. Rumors are worth nothing as evidence. Politics doesn't have any value as evidence, real value. Motives, generally not. Speculation and reputation, good intentions, nothing like that is evidence. That is where the rumor guys and the amateur detectives break off from us. They deal with all of those things. We don't even allow them in. Every time we do that, we construct what is called the murder book. This is my murder book. 259 pages of evidence, 375 photographs, 28 tests, in 3 more books like the one I have also here. And I gave to the court all of that and to District Attorney Grady. He's gotten everything I did. So what we do, we don't deal with that. But what we have to figure out is, how am I going to solve this case? So I huddled with one of my former colleagues and myself. How am I going to solve this case? Well, I looked at the photographs and I looked at all the newspaper articles. I said, oh, no. This is not true. This didn't happen. Once I saw the blood patterns, it couldn't be. So I started analyzing the blood patterns by removing the pixelizations from them. Then I did a thing called blood analysis problem. So what it is in calculus. The X and Y thing, those of you who take calculus and are still not going near the suicide hotline or anything like that, you know that we point every blood thing on that thing, and we attempt to define an axis of symmetry, which way it points. I wish I had a board I could show you, but that'd only elongate this boring part of the presentation. We use calculus to determine areas of concentration and areas of blood. And from that, we can tell how the person was killed. We can tell the timing of the killing, in many cases. We can tell the direction of the offender. And we can tell the type of blood pattern. Was it a cast-off? Was it a splatter? Was it a droplet? Was it a gravitational spill? Was it a smear? We can learn a tremendous amount of things from BPA. Now, the investigators at that time knew nothing about these kind of things. I don't want to be unfair with these people, but their handling was beyond dreadful. The Jack the Ripper case was handled better by the London police than this case was in New York. They seized evidence, they rolled off the crime scene, they did all kinds of things that really looked for the offenders. What I got to do, I got to figure out now, what must I prove to solve this case? First thing I want you to do, I want you to take a look at that picture. I want you to place that picture in your head, and I want you to notice dimension. I want you to notice that the dimensions, let me point some of them out. This is one of the most important parts of this case. The exaggeration of dimensions. This picture was taken 7 days after the murder. This is the side door that the first murder took place. The back of the second front wheel of this truck is where Mabel Germond and his son were murdered. This is the wagon shed in which they were dragged. The distance from here to here is 47 feet. The distance from Salt Point Turnpike to the front store is 61 feet. Keep that in mind. That's a small area. So a witness that comes up has got to have some real value because he can see it. There was no vegetation then. I have pictures then and now. We used lasers to gather the information, how far one thing was from the other. It was no problem, easy to do. And we figured out these dimensions, and that was a start. But now we realize there's three things we got to do. We got to show the order of the killings of these people. Who was killed first, second, or third, or fourth? And we can prove who was killed first, who was killed second, who was killed third, and who was killed fourth. The first person killed was Mabel Germond. Her autopsy, which I went over very, very carefully, you should understand that the type of murder this is we have to figure out too. And it was, without a doubt of any professional, a rage killing. It was a rage killing. Robbery, utter nonsense. Finding a wallet here, that's nonsense. That's staging by a phony criminal. That's staging. It's so obvious. It was sloppy. The person that committed this crime went to the door. Obviously, she knew him. She had a window on each side to look out and see him. It was dusk. It was dark, but she could see a light out there at the time. She looked out the window. She knew the person. She stepped outside, and she was... my quarters are a little confined here. She stepped outside with a person she knew, and she was armed with this device. This device, it took me, a lot of my colleagues and myself from years ago, a lot of effort. We found the original manufacturers in 1920 and 30 of the knife that is the murder weapon, which was stolen, as all the evidence was stolen by the amateur detectives in Stanfordville, who the sheriff let run wild through the office, stealing everything, including the gloves. This knife was manufactured exactly at the time of the other knife. Slightly different because the bow of the murder weapon is 1/2 centimeter higher at one end. And the purpose of that in cutlery is to gouge out the internals of game and of turkeys and chickens and things like that. This knife is exactly to the letter the knife that was used to murder these people. Now, the most important thing about this knife is that unlike a hunting knife and a military knife, it has no knife guard. So when you penetrate somebody with this, it's going to go like that. Blood, when it comes out of a human being, is like motor oil. It's hot and it's very slippery. It's slipperier than the slipperiest kind of oil you could find. When Mabel came out of that door, the offender and her, they were both mean-spirited people. They both were obnoxious characters. She was a tough old gal, and he was a criminal who was in prison for assault and was facing prison on a second assault. Okay? They argued, and she showed the knife like this to the offender. The offender wrestled with her, took the knife away from her, and put it in this position. He stabbed her with a downward stroke and an incredible feat of strength. It penetrated her sternum. Everybody tap that, see how hard that is. Very hard for a knife to go through that. This one did. And not only that, it cut downward and lacerated what we call the xiphoid process, which is cartilaginous tissue right under the sternum. And when it did that, it sliced open the pericardial sac, allowing all kinds of blood to enter her body, which would cause suffocation or bleed out, which happened first. She turned around. She tried to defend herself by kicking the subject with her right leg, and he tried to parry her off by stabbing her right leg like that. And I saw the wound on her leg, the photos of it, and it was definitely a laceration from a knife. She turned around and attempted to run. I'm going to show you pictures that prove all this stuff and tell you what they mean, because nobody knew what they meant. That's the problem. So we have guys that knew. I don't want to portray myself as Bobby, the only guy in the world that could have done this. There's dozens of competent scientists, forensic scientists with years of investigative experience could have done the same thing. This case wasn't that hard if you know what to look at, you know what to look for. So I don't want to take any unnecessary credit. But I'm the only person alive who's ever seen all the evidence. I had to sue to get it, but I got it. And that's what gave me the facts. All right, she spun around in an attempt to escape, and she spun around and she fell on the floor. Of photos, which I'm going to show you, some of them are not nice to look at, but we're going to look at them anyway, because we're big kids. We're ready to see the truth. She fell on the floor, and blood was seen coming out the side of her body this way. Everybody printed in the New York Times, the New York Daily News, that she fell down, she hit her head. I saw her autopsy. There was not a mark on her head. That bleeding is called exsanguination. When she was stabbed and she hit the floor, she was still alive, and probably was alive for another 2 or 3 minutes at the most until the bleed out stopped. But probably she died not from the bleed out, because not enough blood came out for an exsanguination death. She was suffocated because her lungs and pericardial sac were filled with blood. Okay? That's the first gory picture to tell you about. Now, what happened after that? Well, the little boy, Raymond Germond, 10 years old, was sitting in the kitchen. And he's looking out, seeing this horror show, and he ran around outside the other door to go get his father, who was turning the milking machines on in the barn, and he got him to come down toward the side kitchen door, and then a person. Now, you should know that the autopsy report of Dutchess Germond has never been located. I tried everything to find it. I've got the autopsies of the other 3, no trouble at all, from the suit. And that person must have struck him in the head with the end of this knife, because the wound in the pictures, when I go through them, I'll explain this all stuff to you. The wound in the head is not a knife wound. And it's obvious anybody that knows about murder, When you see me hanging around, it means somebody ain't breathing too good anymore. That was my act, you know. So the hit in the head, he had a descending blood flow from a subarachnoid hemorrhage in the head, which is probably what's caused the bleeding. And the person had to know him to get that close after what happened. He then had the knife back and he stabbed him 5 more times. His stabbings were not as precise in the pericardial sac as they were on Mabel's, because he was falling on one knee to the ground, having been hit in the head. He was then stabbed under the right axilla, that's this right here, axilla, and under the right shoulder blade, okay? And it went down, though, very far and did cut his, on the other side, is what is called the brachiocephalic artery. And those of you who know anything about medicine know that that is an important artery that takes blood away from the carotid in the brain, okay? Okay, I hope this stuff doesn't bore you too much, but you wanted to know what happened, and you're going to hear what happened. Okay. Now, the second thing that happened after this guy kills Husted, he can't let Raymond live. He knows who he is. So he chases Raymond all around the barnyard, out into the field, and burrs collect on his pants. And funny, we find gloves later on inside, and we microscopically enhanced the glove pictures all over, and we found definitely those are vegetation on those gloves. Yes, and there was vegetation on the pants of young Raymond. He found them, he stabbed them several times wildly. He did manage to get one good one that separated the inferior vena cava. That's dead. That killed him. He's under a hay wagon, small hay wagon. Now, something has to happen. We have to figure out why. We have to know why the bodies were moved. The case can't be solved because you'll never see something like this in a crime of rage like this, unless the offender is a direct relative and lost his head. Interestingly enough, they usually cover up their face and stuff like that. Boyfriend kills girlfriend, you find them, the girlfriend is dead and her face is covered up and her body is covered up, or she's picked up off the floor and put in the bed and a blanket over her head. That's common. It's not what this case was. He had to move these bodies because he and only he, by proof of habit and custom, knew that any minute a bus was coming down the Salt Point Turnpike and would stop directly in front of that house. And Bernice would get off. And sure enough, all the lights, he turned out. We have evidence, witnesses for that. Bernice got off the bus. She was startled. Mr. Garrity, the bus driver, I think the bus drivers in those days all had to be Irish. One guy's name was Haggerty, and the other guy's name was Garrity. I mean, the Irish found work driving buses, I guess. Well, anyway, Garrity writes that she got off the bus. She was absolutely startled. She just stood there, and she looked, and she wasn't herself, and she slowly walked toward the house that was dark. He later testified after the inquest minutes that she said, "I guess no one's home. I bet they are all out." That is not in his testimony at the inquest, but it's afterthought testimony. He signed an affidavit that he did say later on. She goes into the house, keeping in mind, it's cold. It's 22 degrees to 23.5 degrees between Stanfordville and Clinton Corners at that time of the night, okay? She gets into the house, she takes her coat off, hangs it on hooks. We have testimony to that effect. She walks through the darkness toward the kitchen where our friend is waiting. She cannot be made to live because she would have seen and known her mother laying on the floor in the kitchen. And so she had to die because he needed time to run across the road and up the street to where he lived. He lived 0.42 of a mile from the front door of that house. 1,252 feet, to be precise. I've walked it half a dozen times. I've done it. I'm not in good shape anymore, either, believe me. I did it anywhere between 6.5 minutes and 8 minutes. It's Mickey Mouse. And if you cut through the field and find the passage over the Wapajuice Creek in back of his home, it's Mickey Mouse. It's 5 minutes. No trouble. All right. But he needed time to do that. She's dead. She crawls under a kitchen sink as a last survival strategy. She's terribly frightened. And when we find her body, her eyes are open, which nobody should glean anything from. Anybody like myself who's been in combat know that people are killed when they're scared and they die with their eyes open. It's not uncommon to see a soldier dead with his eyes open. Not unusual. Nothing unusual about a crime victim. She's frightened, and therefore the cells behind her palperas, those are our eyelids in medicine, for you medicine folks, there are things called the petechial cells. The petechial cells hemorrhage in your eyes when you're frightened or you're tensing, and it will prevent your lids from closing. So that's sometimes how you die, with your eyes open. Well, anyway, she's under the sink, and they find her watch stopping at 6:41, which as evidence means absolutely nothing. It doesn't mean a thing. Everybody made something that it doesn't mean anything. Rarely have I ever seen a watch hit the ground. Oh, he was killed at 7:03. Look at that watch. It stopped. Television likes that, but it's not what happens regularly. Okay, so now we have all 4 murders. How do I know this? Well, the wound on the head of Mr. Germond, the wounds on Mabel Germond, the fact that the body of Raymond is found outside in 22-degree weather with no coat on. I have a picture of that. It's impossible to conceive that under the circumstances. So he wasn't working outside with his father, as some newspaper people allege. Okay? Now, where do we go from here? We know why the bodies were moved. So now we got to do some tests to prove out one of our theories. We have to do scientific testing. So what we did was we took and found the lumens of the headlights of 1930 buses, 3,000 lumens, and we tested them against 3,500 to 4,000 lumens on modern buses, and we had to use braking lasers to go through the foliage that did not exist then, and we drove one headlight thing down the road on Salt Point Turnpike. We came to the turn, and the headlights, both of them, using lasers, would have shined right into that yard, and those bodies would have been easily visible. The first time they would have been visible would have been no more than 400 feet away. And then when the bus got closer, you could only reach. That's why I tell you to keep in mind these dimensions. By the way, has anybody got a 72 Volkswagen outside? How to use your aerial? I hope you don't mind. All right. That's why we had to use those dimensions to prove the possibility of something. You see, forensic science doesn't require you to suspend logic, because some of the reports would have you believe that the lights were really on. She got off the house. She was just nervous. She walked in the house. She turned the lights out, and then somebody killed her. Absurd. Why would she do that? Why would you could just get home, you turn the lights out? That's nuttiness. See, that's logic. You can't suspend logic in the name of evidence. Okay? Now, where are we going from here? We got part of this done. Why do I think you can ask me? I'm going to show you the pictures, and the pictures are worth 1,000 words in this case, as to why I came to the conclusions I came to. I got to cut this little sucker short here. All right. All right. Okay, the order of those killings, that was crucial. Okay, so we told you that Mabel was killed first, Husted was killed second, Raymond is killed third, and Bernice is killed fourth. Bernice is killed 5:20. She gets off that bus. Now we subpoena, through subpoena, the district attorney had all the records of Mr. Haggerty, the bus driver. This guy was a machine. He stopped and made a note at every stop he made with precision. 5:20, exactly. All the days we saw all his records, I saw every one of them. He was 5:22, 5:20, and he testified under oath that it was 5:20. All right, it's 5:20. She goes out, and she's murdered. The offender has some tasks ahead of him. He has to figure out a way to throw the police off when sooner or later, a day or two later, they'll find out. And the fact that the guy didn't deliver his milk to the creamery up in Creamery Road there, he didn't deliver his milk, so they had to send somebody out there to figure out what's the matter with him because he's such a loyal guy at doing such things. And they found the bodies. So that gave him time to do the things he had to do. One of the things he had to do was pull out the wallet of Eustace Germond from his back pocket. And interestingly enough, the inside of the pocket was all pulled outside, just like Edgar Allan Poe's, all the mystery stories, just like a stage scene. I've probably been to 100 murders, at least, probably a lot more. I never saw that happen once, even street murders. I don't remember it. I'm not saying it didn't happen. I just never saw it. And then he had to take the contents of that wallet, walk down the road approximately 600 feet, and drop it in the side of the road where it was very visible, with only Mr. Germond's driver's license and personal papers in it, and the money gone. Now, the money was a big topic of discussion. Nobody bothered to investigate that. All right. And then he had to come back. He had to go up the road behind the house toward Route 82, which they called the county road then, at the confluence of Salt Point Turnpike and Route 82, and throw the knife over a stone wall at that location, about which I have photographs, okay? Now, if ever a guy was trying to stage a scene to fool the police he must have thought were truly stupid. Why would a guy, if he's going to rob something, throw a knife in the opposite direction of his escape route and then put another escape route except to think he's going to confuse the police? And he succeeded in confusing them all. But then he had another task. Every night, and you will find in my book, and I hope you'll read the book, and I think you'll get a lot of answers. You're going to see something in there called the VIN rules. These are my rules. I wrote them. All my investigations over 50-odd years. I put VIN rules. When people start, VIN rule number 1, when people start doing something that they never do or stop doing something that they always do, there must be a reason. Whatever the reason is. I don't care what it is. He went home. He took what it was called Arctics off, which were the exact same color of the underpants and stuff he was wearing. And he went in the house at exactly 10 minutes to 7. He was a busy guy in the meantime. Every single night of his life, he was a chicken farmer. He goes out at 6:30 every single night and he collects the eggs. The night of the 25th of November, he did not collect his eggs. When people start doing things they never do, but do things that they always do, okay? Then he had to do a few other things. Problem came up when he got back. A guy named Raymond who owned a gas station up the road, and the gas station's still there. I walked up and down that quite a few times. Had an appointment with him for a haircut. So he walked down the road to the house where the offender lived, and he was ready to get his haircut. He looked in. The offender wasn't there. but he saw a child at a table and the offender's wife. The offender wasn't there. It's now 10 minutes to 7. Finally, the wife opens the door and lets the guy in for the haircut. And wouldn't you have it, Mr. Offender walks in to give the guy the haircut. Buys testified that the guy was very, very nervous, very shaken like a leaf, and he put the towel around his neck and his hands were like ice. When he got in the house, he held his hands over the stove in the kitchen to warm them up. And the towel was very cold, and he was cold, and he was shaking. He was cold. How could that be? And then he asked if you want some hazel or something like that on your hair. Ever in his entire life, for 7 years, the man's been cutting his hair. He never once asked for that. Quite a few other things. All right, but now let's look at the other events that we have. We have a boatload of suspects. I'll try to, let's see. We have a literally a boatload of suspects. All right, my book gives you quite a few pictures, explains the evidence in every picture. It'll be better for you to read a lot. By the way, my goal with the book, I had to do something. I had to make 3,000 pages of notes into this so you could figure it out for yourself. So I just put the major evidence in here. There's plenty more. What I gave the district attorney, it probably took him and his staff about 2 weeks to read. Judge Aker, I guarantee, didn't read it. She had nothing to do. He really would, because she had a stack of things like that. Those were my work product. All right, let's look at the suspects, and there were plenty of them. We have one famous suspect. I think this is the most famous suspect in this whole case. All right. A man walked into a store, which I ate lunch in several times. It's still there in Clinton Corners. The guy introduced himself to me. I forgot his name. Maybe some of you know his name. And he walked into the store, and he wanted to know the bus schedule to New York. Well, he says, there's no bus schedule at this hour. He said, look, my mother is dying in Hudson. I've got to get to Hudson to see her. My name is Florentine Chase, he said with a surprised foreign accent. They thought to be Hungarian. Okay? He says, no, we can't do anything. The guy walked around. He was dressed beautifully. He had nice shoes on and everything else. Right off the bat, I'm nervous. Man just stabs a person, 4 people, 23 times, drags bodies, bloody bodies across a courtyard, steps over a dead body in a kitchen, drags a young girl into the kitchen, holds her and stabs her while holding her, and he's got no blood on him or none on his shoes. Impossible. We did some tests on that too, and nobody believed that was possible. Nobody. Nobody who knows this field at all, and I use a couple of my former colleagues to help believe that. This man was dressed beautifully, but he told a whole bunch of lies to get sympathy, to get somebody to take him to the train station. Which brings me something I forgot to tell you, and it's the kind of witnesses. All right. There are 3 kinds of witnesses. There's the disinterested witness, there's the interested witness, and then there's the Andy Warhol witness. The Andy Warhol witness is a person who introduces himself into the case with such hypnotic intensity that he actually believes he's part of the case. He doesn't mean to lie. He really just on the edge of lying. He's not lying. He's just on the edge. But he's really fabricating. He wants to be part of it so bad. Such was the case of Mr. Wing and Mr. Youngins, the 2 fellows that were hired to take this man to the train station. Well, Youngins testified under oath. Well, he was nervous wreck. I kept my hand on the crank handle in the car in case he got tough, he got rough. I was ready. These 2 men hadn't the faintest idea that any crime had been committed anywhere. No one in the world knew this crime was committed at that time. This was 3.5 hours roughly after the crime. We're expected to believe that this famous man, who became very popular, he was the same man they saw walking on the road, the same man that was on the bus. Now, I'm going to show you that he's not. And that he walked 3.5 miles to Clinton Corners in open view, no vegetation, farmhouses on both sides, easily seen from the road, in perfectly beautiful clothes, and suddenly walks in there and is nervous. He wants a ride, tells you a false name, tells you he knows a bunch of people in Stanfordville, and he mentions the right names. He calls himself Florentine Chase. No such human being existed ever as Florentine Chase. Newspapers for 30 years kept saying, we put Florentine Chase in a lineup. It didn't exist. The guy made it up. He didn't exist. He told a cock and bull story to get a ride. People would feel sorry for him. It is improbable that this man committed a murder 2.5 hours, 2.5 to 3.5 hours earlier, and went in and he bought something, and one of the store attendants said later on, there was a stain on one of those bills. Does he know what a blood stain looks like? They look like millions of different things. I could show you gray blood stains. I could show you orange ones. I could show you they take different colors with the type of surface they hit. There's no way he could have known that. He dreamed that up in his Andy Warhol moment shortly after that. No such person in the whole history of this case named Florentine Chase has ever been identified. Now, they picked up a guy in Brooklyn named Florentine Asperge, who worked on the road gangs up there. They dragged him up here with a warrant. They kept him for 55 days. They put him into 4 lineups. Nobody picked him out. Then he had come up with an alibi. That was even better. Now, we have the man walking on the highway. We have the man on the bus. We have the man in Clinton Corners. We have Paul Germond became a suspect too. That's the brother. Became a suspect. A guy named Steve Lico and Andrew Nemez became suspects. Andrew Nemez had an IQ of 67, was a peeping Tom, and Steve Lico was 5 feet 4 inches tall, not much bigger than Raymond Germond. How he would have handled Mrs. Germond's body amazes me. He's impossible. The other guy told a fib about seeing the crime and all that stuff. Then there's another guy who was hiding under the creek, and I took pictures of the creek and did tests out there for sound in the winter when it was like the creek at that point makes noise when it runs. You can hear it. You can hear it all the time. So I stood there, put audio sensors in front of the house. I listened. I had a couple of guys yell down at the other end. It's impossible for him to have heard anything, and it was impossible for him to see it because we used a laser from the bridge, and that laser did not penetrate the trees going to the front door. He couldn't have seen it. He was, to put it nicely, he was prevaricating. It's a nice clean word, isn't it? You know. I told you about the types of witnesses. Now let me show you some people who were witnesses to this crime, and then I'm going to get to hope my screen works pretty good. It didn't work pretty good here earlier, but I hope it will work. Always keeping in mind this picture. Don't take that picture out of your mind, okay? Now, let's look at what would be the good thing to tell you next. I told you about, I did tell you about that stuff, rolls the knives. Oh yes, the famous gloves. Many of you who ever followed this case have heard of the famous gloves. By the way, I should have asked, is anybody familiar with this case? Any of you people? Are there any forensic scientists here? since I'm the only person on the face of the earth who's ever seen the evidence, I hope you're clairvoyant if you're... Well, anyway, the gloves. There's a pair of gloves that's in the lore of this case. And like a broken clock, it's right twice a day. And some of the rumors turned out to be true. The gloves were worn by the murderer. We have a lot of evidence to that. We did some very intense work on the pictures of the gloves by expanding, eliminating. The software eliminates pixelization, enhances parts, identified penumbras on the gloves. You like that dark, shadowy part of the glove, which indicates usually a knife separation. When the fabric is separated, that usually can get torn in some way. And we found vegetation, and we found numerous shadows on the gloves, which I must call inconclusive, but I do believe it's inconclusive, but probably in a little world they'll be called blood. So those gloves were the murder weapons, and when I get to the pictures to show you, which I'm going to start momentarily, you're going to find that the gloves were found on the table right above where Bernice's body was hiding under the sink. What more would you need to see? Unless you're an invincible idiot. Looking at these things, these people that handle this case, they brought a detective in from Poughkeepsie who had some experience in these kind of cases. He got to the scene and he ran screaming out of there and went back to Poughkeepsie. He said, "You'll never solve this case. These guys are all wacky." Because all kinds of citizens, it's just like this poor souls that are killed in Idaho, is it? The poor girls that are murdered. The last thing the police will want to do is tell everybody these things. Yet two of the fathers came forward and they're talking like they're scientists. These guys, all they are obstructing the case. Everybody wants it solved, and they're trying. Random cases, rage case like that takes time. It isn't always solvable right away. Okay? All right, now let's, all right. Oh, well, yeah, there was for years and years, let me give you another one. I got so many, I can't get them all out here, so, but, all right. They could have done blood tests, the police then, in 1930. There were active blood procedures in 1930 that could have been done. I find no record anywhere in the sheriff's office or anywhere on earth that shows these blood tests were ever done. There's precipidine, benzodrine tests, you have ABO testing, you have RH factor, and you have blood enzymes. Some of those could distinguish between two different contributors. Others can contribute to relationships, and lots of things can be discovered from those blood tests. None of them were done. Oh yes, the check. Remember, they took his money out of his wallet. He went to Millbrook to cash a check. Does anybody remember reading that? He went to Millbrook to cash, and for years, it couldn't be robbery. He only had about 40, 50 bucks. He don't know what he had in his pocket. Well, he paid some bills, they said, but they weren't sure what really happened. Well, let's find out what happened. Okay. All righty, well, let's find out. Where's my... I've got so many notes, I don't know what the hell to do with them all. All right. These killings of people, it takes up a lot of time, a lot of paper, too. Man, what? So if you don't take up the job of killing people, you're going to be, you can be keeping the paper business inactive. All right. The check that he cashed at the Millbrook Bank, if they wanted to conduct the investigation, now I had to use some former colleagues to help me with this. They had to get the old bank records from the Millbrook Bank. That man did not have a $150 milk check there. He cashed a $255 milk check there, in which he deposited most of it and got $137 back. He paid about $80 in bills after he left there. Okay, which meant he died and was murdered. He had $69 in his pocket. So those are the facts, which could have been found then. And I got them 92 years later. So to give you an idea what kind of investigators we were looking at in those days. All right, so let's go. I'm going to go to my the videotape, so to speak, but they're not videotape at all. I'm going to be in Cynthia's way here. I'm going to have to move out. But I'm going to sit in a seat behind you. It's all right if you just let me through there. I'm going to try to. We got some close quarters here.
Yes, we do.
All right. All right. Let's see what I can do here. All right. I'm going to explain these things to you as I go through. And I'm going to tell you what is evidence and what isn't, what means anything and what doesn't. Okay? 22 crime scene photos I found, and it was a good thing I found them. The sheriff gave me the 22. His name is Jonathan Hughes. He was the training officer there. He was a very good man. He cooperated wholeheartedly. I took special Polaroid shots of it that I could embellish. You don't want chronic arthritis, believe me. You don't want it. Okay, let me hope that this all... Okay, let's see how it goes. Okay. New York State. How do I get out of this little sucker here? Carol, you want to respond up here to help me? I'm trying to get out of this little thing here. Yeah, well, no, it's not in the same thread as this. It's the other ones. I don't want to be in this photo set any longer. I want to exit out like so up on the top and get back to that little game up here. Remember, and it's one of these. Now let's see if we can find the right one. Open with PowerPoint. Ah, there we are. Okay. Now there's the cover of the book. Oh, wait, you don't need to.
Do you want me to put it? Do you want to put it on slideshow?
Yes.
Yep.
Where do I got to hit?
Yeah, I can. Yep, slideshow.
I hit it.
And then
Carol, what would I do without you?
you'd be just fine.
No, I wouldn't.
There you go.
Okay.
And you'll just click that arrow
Okay.
to advance.
All right.
Is that
Click
where you
the
want
arrow
it?
to advance. How will I know what the next one is? I don't have the numbers.
That's the next one.
Okay, so I'll have to just go like that to do it.
Yeah.
All right, let's start with, there's the book cover, which means nothing. There's the knife. You just saw the type of knife. You see the end of it. It's a half a centimeter thicker right there, and that's for gouging out the interns of game, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, this is a little crime scene photo I put together when I first got there. They never did any of this stuff. I wrote this on the back of an envelope when I got there based on looking at pictures. I knew nothing about this. I did it again. Now there's my families are buried right there. Okay? And there's the Germond family buried 71 feet away from them. What a coincidence that is, huh? These people are buried 71 feet from my grandparents, 2 aunts, and 2 uncles. Okay, this is the store in Clinton Corners where that fellow, that's the most famous bandit in Stanfordville history, is alleged to have conned his way into getting a car ride to the station. That's the store, okay? Now this is, as you know, this is the home of Arthur Curry, who is the person that I'm prepared to swear under oath committed this crime, okay? That's his house. Okay. I walked to that house many times, right up the road. It's 82 feet, I'll tell you later, to the Route 82, 82 feet, okay? Now there's the creek, okay? There's a place where the person is hiding, okay, where we put sound devices and stuff, proved that couldn't be. Now here's the clean picture of the house I wanted to show you originally. You remember the dimensions, right? 44 feet, 51 feet, 66 feet. See that? Very close. This is the other side of the house that the offender walked around. And well, this is the barnyard. Well, we've seen that. We don't need that. This is the the wagon shed right there, and you can still see the blood spot, okay, where he was killed, where Husted was killed, dragged into there, where a man was seen fixing the doors. I'm going to tell you all about these people in a minute. Here is a aerial pictorialization from Mr. Curry's home to the front door of the Germond home. 0.42 hundredths of a mile, 1,274 feet, okay? Very short, not far at all. All right, there's Mr. Curry. Okay, there is a famous newspaper on the table. This newspaper has caused more confusion in this case than anybody. This was the morning edition of the Poughkeepsie Journal, whatever it's called. It couldn't have been put there by Bernice. When he came from the bank, he must have purchased it in one of the stores he was in. Nobody was sitting at that table reading the paper. Some of the things would have you believe that Bernice was sitting there reading the paper while her mother was being stabbed to death. Both murders in the kitchen, the Bernice and Mabel, were murdered by a man who was holding them. He was holding them. The blood droplets, which I'm going to show you, prove it. Okay? There's the famous gloves. Those gloves, it was rough to deal with this. We had to do a lot of work with this. There's the gloves. They're brown. Ford Friday, the man that run the general store there, said he never sold brown gloves to anybody in the Germond household. He never sold, never carried brown gloves. Okay? All right. These brown gloves are laying on a table under which the body of Bernice Germond lie. There's the murder weapon. There's the weapon I just showed you right there. Pretty similar, wouldn't you say? There's the door. Now, see all this out here? It's still blood. She stepped outside. He didn't come inside. She stepped outside. That's blood droppings that are gravitational and smears right there. And up, if you had the door open right here, you'd see smears all along this door saddle. One window, she had a big poker right next to there. She could have used that if she thought it was a bad guy at the door. Okay? Okay, now here's a very important. This is a picture of Mabel's foot. If you notice the foot, it's hard to tell in this photo. The heel has no blood. The sole does, which means she was standing where she was being stabbed and therefore couldn't have had blood on the heel, and blood on the sole because she turned around and ran. This tells me she was out here standing, and then she turned to run, and that instep got blood on it right here, but not on the heel, because no blood was falling where she could touch with the heel. So she was outside when this was happening. Okay, okay, that's the same thing. This is better view. See all these blood droplets here? This is all gravitational by a person who was not being held. See this? These are gravitation. These are smears. These are not cast-offs, as some people said. They're not. These are droplets. These are spatters. They're called spatters. These right here are all gravitational droplets by a person who is fighting with someone. She's not being held here. No way. Now this is Mabel. Did not hit her head on the stove. Did not have a mark on her head. And there's the blood. That is called exsanguination, which stopped when her heart stopped. It stopped because not so much that her heart stopped, that she strangled to death. She choked to death on the blood filling her cavity, the pericardial cavity, as I told you. Okay? There is a looking in the door picture. One is a clear view, nothing on the heel. Terrible pictures, but the best I could work with these. I have better ones up here, real good ones. But these for showing these. See the blood all outside dripping? See nothing on her heels. And there in the far corner lays Bernice under a table. And there you can see more blood right there. I would say that blood is from the pericardial wound. This blood is from the axillary wound. She's bleeding out, which means when you see her here, when she first hit she was alive. When she hit the floor, she was alive. Her right leg right here had the gash. You can see part of it. When she went to kick the offender, that is a laceration. Okay? Here's a very important picture. Well, yeah, pretty important. Here you have more blood streaming out. It doesn't show you the pictures I want you to see of blood, but here you have Bernice's blood at a substantial difference from her mother. Does anyone really believe she was standing there watching her mother be murdered and did nothing? No one could believe that. You'd have to suspend logic. That's not a job of a forensic scientist, okay? Okay, here is Bernice under the table. Her eyes are open. I explained that to you. She has, okay, defense wounds. You've all heard of defense wounds. If a knife is coming down like this, the defense wounds are in right here, called the thenar eminence, is what it's called. The indigitor creases is when it's grabbed, okay? If they push a knife at you, it's grabbed. The phalanges creases are where the wound is. In here is where her wounds are all in here, which she was parrying the knife coming down that he was stabbing her with here. She's got two on the right hand and one on the left that's slid a little bit up her arm and near that watch, but had nothing to do with the watch that broke off. Here is Raymond Germond after he was murdered. He is not wearing a coat. He is not wearing a coat. Impossible for that kid to be working outside. 22 degrees, I told you. Okay? This is the wagon shed under which he was found, and you can see how close it is. There's the wood shed, the wagon shed. There's the back door of the kitchen. The dimensions here are confusing. They're not very far. They're the same as I told you before. That's the way. Now here's a picture of their bodies in the wagon shed. All right? As you see clearly that Raymond is not wearing a coat. And you can see there is secondary rigor beginning in both arms. That's secondary rigor. The first post-mortem is algor mortis, livor mortis, rigor mortis, and putrefaction. They are starting third-degree rigor mortis here, and that boy is beginning putrefaction in the right and the left arm. Now here's the evidence. See this right here, where the arrow is? See the blood on that man's head? That is not a knife wound. No way. Nobody that I've showed this to, when I first saw it, I knew it wasn't, and my colleagues didn't think it's a knife wound either. Definitely not. It's a blow to the head. Okay. He is wearing a coat because it is quite cold outside. Okay. Now here's the day after the bodies were found. Here's all the detectives, amateur detectives, lining up here with their cars. This is all you need to see to know that this case was thrown out the window right from the start. This is the reward wanted. He's wanted for murder, okay, for the person that killed it. This is the fingerprints of Andrew Curry. I got them, and I took them, and I compared them to known fingerprints that he had for a license for a pistol, and those are, in fact, his prints. I found some print spatter, print smears, plastic prints we call them, where they touch blood or something. I could not, the comparison was inconclusive with respect to this defendant. I couldn't prove it, so it's inconclusive. Okay, this is it, his death notice, 1955. Okay, this is my court order to get all the evidence. That's page 2, Judge Acker. See that? The letter from my lawyers, congratulating me for getting this all done here. Okay, this is a side door that's been cleaned up sloppily. See all the blood smears all over the sill. See that? This is all blood, which means I doubt you couldn't have, well, if he had gloves on, I don't think the prints, I would have looked for prints there anyway. All this is all blood spatter right down here, all that stuff. Okay, there's the barn. He walked down from there. He wasn't completely there. He did turn the milking machines on because after bodies were discovered, they heard the milking machines going and they had to shut them off. Okay, this is the exact site where the knife was found. He threw the knife the opposite side of the house down here. There's a stone wall right down there where you can't see. That's where the knife was. There's the stone wall. There's the house. See the house? So he walked around, went down here, threw the knife right here. Where it was found by a taxi cab driver. That happens to be true. Give you an idea how much of a search these guys did. Okay, now this is the side taken. I don't know when this was taken. It was not taken at the crime scene. So I'm not sure why this picture is there. It has no bearing. This is hanging clothes in the back. I don't know why that's there either, but it was in the crime scene photos. There's the picture of all the cars. You've seen that. And there's more blood smear. That's a good picture. See that white? Nothing there? That is evidence right there. Definitely. Without a doubt. Okay. And there's her again. There's the gloves. I want to get to the gloves on the table. Oh, here. I can't raise it up. I can't. See those right there? Those are the gloves. And there's her body. There the gloves. Now, all the blood from Mabel is over here. You see none of anyone else's blood there, but you see major droplets here that we tested in the axis of symmetry the same way. This person was being held while being stabbed. All those are blood gravitational falls. No fight. The person was grabbed from behind, most likely. One of the knife wounds is lateral into the lower left pleural cavity, lower left, okay. I suspect she was grabbed from there. There is the big one right there. He knew the person that came after him. He had to let him get that close. He had to hear the screaming and yelling from his son. That is a wound, a blunt force wound. That is not a knife wound. And this autopsy report has disappeared with lots of the other evidence. If I still had the gloves, I could probably still do a lot of things with them. There's Raymond, poor soul, with no coat on, freezing to death. There they are again, better pictures in the barn. And you can tell the rigor beginning here. I would say the reason his is more advanced than his father's is he probably was left outside a little longer. That's possible, but I doubt it. There's the man standing. Here he is again. There's the monument for those people right up the street, up the feet from where my family is. That's the one you saw that. That's all you got to see there. Okay, let me then close this down and get out of your way. I'm going to tell you the evidence of witnesses. This is very important. Thank you, Cynthia. I'll get out of here. I won't be coming back here. I can't stand looking at any more pictures. Thank you. Oh, I see it. It's not mine. Don't look at me. All right. Where are we? Ooh, I'm falling. I don't drink anymore either. I never did this when I was drinking. I fell down. Never had a cold till I quit drinking. Oh, what happened to me? All right. Now, let's look at some of the evidence that are actual witness evidence that means something. can put this knife away. I think we don't need this anymore. Somebody walking behind me, getting a little nervous there. Knife's up here. All right. Okay. Oh, it's time? Okay, oh yeah, okay. I will wrap it up. And then I gotta leave you a chance to question me. All right, just gonna go over the evidence quickly, because this could go on for a long time. Just diving out the doors now. This is the story of my life. All right, let's look at the key people who are witnesses in this crime. Disinterested witnesses have no dog in the fight. The first person is Jennifer Coffin, woman just driving to pick up her mother to bring her to eat at her house, no problem at all. She passes by the house between 4:30 and 5 p.m., and she saw a man whom she described as wearing the same clothes she saw one time on Arthur Curry. Now, she was brought down to give an affidavit to the sheriff's office, and they were bringing people in the other door, and she went and pointed to Mr. Curry, says, "That's the man that looks exactly like the one I saw in the yard." Is that proof positive? No. It's inconclusive, but it's something. It's the clothes. She also, wearing those same clothes, and when she returned later at 8 p.m. with her mother, there were no lights on. So we have to believe, the New York Times will tell us, you know the New York Times never lies. We know that, right? So Bernice came into the house, turned all the lights on, and let somebody kill her. That's what we have to believe, okay? Because we have evidence the lights were out. Okay, the sworn statements of Raymond Buys and Mrs. Lillian Buys, his wife, which I told you about earlier, he went for the haircut. He wasn't there at 10 to 7. He testified, swore under oath at 2 hearings, signed an affidavit for the district attorney. The man wasn't there at 10 to 7, that he was cold and all, that's his hands. His wife verified the closing of the store, the gas station. His son signed an affidavit that he had to stay there at 7:30 for the closing of the store. So we have disinterested witnesses proving some very important information. And it fits perfectly with his wife, Mrs. Curry, who he intimidated into lying under oath. She lied under oath. She was found out. She said they rehearsed the testimony. They rehearsed his testimony and her testimony. They let her off the hook for perjury. I don't know why. I would have had her locked up. She perjured herself and then came clean and said, no, that's not, Mr. Buys is telling the truth. He wasn't here at that time. So we got him lying. We got him telling millions of lies. Herbert Schiffer is another guy, very disinterested witness. Sworn affidavit, he testifies that a man about 5 or 10 minutes past the Germond property, he passed there and noticed lights on in Germond's truck and Germond walking through the yard toward the barn. He returned by the house again at 6:30 and 6:40 and saw a thin, lanky man and claimed that the lights were all out. This confirms Raymond Buys' testimony. He swore under oath the man wasn't there. That is heavy-duty evidence right there. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up. I mean, I got a lot more I could say. Grace Brennan, he claimed they were at his house having a party for Thanksgiving the night before. He lied. She said he never talked to him. We were never there. Never happened. Mr. Haggerty, the bus driver, he claimed he was on his porch of his house that I showed you at 6 p.m. because the sound of the bus coming by with bad brakes and it woke him up, and they stopped right in front of his house. He went out, turned the lights on to see that. We have 3 eyewitnesses that swore affidavits twice that he was never on that porch, never turned the lights on, and never said any of the things to anyone else. He also said many things about Bernice Germond, which he denied under oath, which 3 affidavits by a guy named Conger and Vale, signed affidavits under penalty of perjury. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up because we're going too long. The last thing to say, it is my professional opinion, that being all the evidence, that if he wasn't going to be convicted of murder, which he might not have been, I have to be fair about that, he certainly could have been convicted of 4 counts of perjury. He could have been convicted of tampering with a witness. He could have been convicted of conspiracy. And he could have been convicted of conspiracy to tamper with another witness. There's evidence he did all those things. So it is my professional opinion, based on all the evidence, that he's the offender. Now, if you have any questions for me, as Cynthia's here with that electric rod, it gets me in the knees if I make any false moves or go too long. Does anybody have any questions or want to ask me anything? Go ahead.
What do you believe the motive was?
That's an important question. We don't deal with motives, but we do know we deal with types of murders. The murder was a rage killing. He met a tough old gal in the kitchen, and he's a nasty old guy himself, and the rest is history. It was a rage. The wounds tell me it was a rage. Back in forensic.
No prior,
Oh yes.
statements that people-
Oh yeah. We had negative interactions. Oh, absolutely, they did. Yeah, all kinds of evidence. I'll be right.
It was a spur of the moment. It wasn't premeditated.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. He has a history. He was in prison for a year for assault in Sing Sing. I got his prints from there. And also, he has another case was pending for assault. She has a reputation of being difficult. Came to the door. He wanted $40 from them because they rent some land from him. And she said, "We don't have the money." Now, when an argument starts back and forth, and that's what started it. So it's rage. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Hello.
The picture of the 2 female victims in the kitchen,
I'm sorry.
the picture of the 2 female victims in the kitchen.
Yes, ma'am.
This long pipe with the blood all at the end of it, what is that?
That is a cart that had nothing to do with the crime and wasn't there at the original crime.
Huh, but it's laying right in the hole of blood?
I can't account for that, but it's not part of the crime scene.
Huh, I would think there was an original picture from when my father was.
Oh, gee, I'm sorry. I mean, I did the best I could.
Yeah, okay, just a question.
Thank you. Anybody else? Did you have something?
Yeah, it was the motive.
The motive. Motive was rage. If you saw the autopsies, everybody that ever saw them knows it was a rage killing. No 2 ways about it. No questions?
What happened to him?
What happened to him? He died of old age in 1955. He died of old age. I believe there's a bit of corruption involved in this case, so I can't prove it, but I think there was some corruption.
Living in the same house?
I'm sorry?
Living in the same house?
He was living in that same house. That is correct. That's correct. He lived in the same house. The house at the corner of Salt Point Turnpike and 82.
After that, a pheasant farm, wasn't it?
I have no idea.
Yes. Yes.
Couldn't tell you. Anything else? Anybody? Well, I'll be here for questions for a few minutes. If you want to, you need books. I've got the books for sale. Other than that, I want to thank you all for listening to me.
And we want to thank you.
All right.